Hey folks, we just started the live meeting. We will give a couple more minutes to see if we have anybody else join, but I know we have pretty light registration for today. So everybody that is on, feel free to um, put any questions you have in chat or um, anything like that, and we can be sure to get those answered. And we are recording this presentation and that will be made available on the TANF website on the IHCDA page very soon after this presentation. Get going here in just a minute. All right. Well, in the interest of time, we will get rolling here. Thank you for attending our TANF short-term rapid rehousing and homeless prevention webinar. This is for the application round that has opened up. Here's our agenda for today. We'll be going over kind of the timeline. You'll get to know Laura and I a little bit. We'll go over uh, applicant eligibility, program participant eligibility, some of the components and eligible costs that can be handled with this funding. We'll go over some of the program requirements, reporting, and then we will walk through the application. I'll be able to give some insights into some of the things we want to see there. And then we will have, I think, plenty of time for Q&A if any questions do come up. This is our TANF team, and my name is Jim Flatford. I'm the TANF program manager. I also manage the ESG program here at IHCDA. You'll be hearing from Laura Drasic. She is our TANF manager, or TANF analyst. I about gave her a promotion there. I don't think I can do that as much as she deserves it. But she is your day-to-day contact for the TANF funding. Any questions that come up, contracts that go out, you'll be hearing from Laura. And then if you're awarded funding and we get through that, you will know Wes. He is our TANF monitor. He's going to be making sure that everybody's equipped with any required forms and knows the ins and outs of the requirements there. And he'll be checking in with you to just make sure things are going well and that all your T's are crossed and I's are dotted. So he's a great contact for that as well. The timeline for this funding, we did open this up for applications on September 30th. Today we're holding our information webinar, and the application will close on October 28th at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that is a hard shutoff. The application through SurveyMonkey is set to shut at 5 o'clock. So do be sure that you allow enough time to get your application in prior to that. Due to the timing of our board meetings here towards the end of the year, we will be presenting any recommendations that we have to our board on December 19th. And then hopefully have a happy holidays message with some grant awards going out starting probably around Monday, the 23rd of December. Some of the background on this funding, our leadership approached FSSA it really with the goal of trying to fill a gap in our housing services. We've heard from a lot of the programs that we fund that they're seeing a lot of clients, women with children, pregnant women, and it's really an area that needs more focus. So we took what we heard from our grantees out in the field, and our leadership found some funding for it. So this funding is coming from the state FSSA office, and it is TANF funds. And how this works with IHCDA is we're using these TANF funds to help with short-term rapid rehousing and homeless prevention. So getting somebody housed that's homeless, or keeping someone in their home that's at imminent risk to lose their housing. For TANF purposes, this funding serves statutory one, um, to assist families so that children may be cared for in their own homes or in the homes of relatives. So that's the bullet we're meeting there with TANF. And this is actually the second round of TANF applications that we have made available. The first round was restricted to organizations that receive emergency solutions grant funding, either from IHCDA or from an entitlement city. This round is open to all nonprofits in the state of Indiana, and that does include Marion County. Often with a lot of our funding, IHCDA is limited to funding outside of Marion County. This is different with this round, so we're excited to get some funds going here in the center of the state. And I'm going to kick it off to Laura. She's going to walk through some of the applicant eligibility and client eligibility and just really get into the details with it. Take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Yeah, as Jim said, my name is Laura Drasic. I'm the TANF analyst. So if you were to receive funding from us, I would be your day-to-day person that you would hear from and contact with questions. But we're going to go through just a little bit about the eligibility requirements that we require of you if you are going to apply. And then we'll get into some more of the program eligibility and stuff. And as Jim said, feel free to put questions in the chat. We're more than happy to answer them for you. But to be eligible for this funding, you must have to have an active status as a nonprofit, a 501c3, in the state of Indiana. Definitely cannot be debarred or suspended from receiving other federal funds. And then that fourth bullet point, you cannot have any unresolved IHCDA or entitlement city or HUD fundings due to noncompliance. So those things are important. And then you must have a UEI, an ID number with sam.gov. And we do require that you operate with a housing first approach. So any of those preconditions, like folks having to be sober or have to have a job or have income before that you can assist them, that's not okay. We ask that you would take a housing first approach, that housing and providing folks housing comes first. Additionally, you must have internet access. I will be emailing you if you do receive funding quite a lot. A lot of our email communication and information is going to be through email. There will be updates on the website, but having access to internet is very important. Additionally, having use of a financial software system that you use for your accounting purposes is incredibly important. The application will ask you about that, and it asks you specifically about those 4 items: the general ledger, cash receipts, cash disbursements, and fixed assets. So those are some of the eligibility requirements. Additionally, if you are awarded the TANF funds, you will be required to participate in the 2025 point in time count. For you all, this second round, if you were awarded, this would most likely be the 2026 point in time count, now that I think about it, just because this takes place in the beginning of January. So that definitely would be the 2026 year for you all. And then as well as the housing inventory chart. To make note, this bullet point doesn't say this here, but this is only for folks doing rapid rehousing projects. So if you are just doing homeless prevention, you wouldn't have to do the point in time count. We also are going to require that everyone would submit their client level data into HMIS, or if you are serving survivors of domestic violence, a DV client track. So these are two databases that we utilize to collect client level data and to track and report to FSSA. Additionally, we're going to ask that you attend all of our IHCDA trainings related to the TANF award. So webinars like this or quick trainings that I may do, we would ask that you attend those. And then additionally, that you would comply with HUD's equal access rule. So that is advocating for access for LGBTQ and trans folks into shelters. This is a really important rule, providing more access to marginalized communities. Additionally, we would require that you ensure that all clients in the program would meet the HUD category definitions of homelessness or at risk of homelessness and the FSSA eligibility requirements, which we'll get into here in a moment. And then these are just some encouragements. We would encourage that you attend and participate in your regional planning council and coordinate and integrate any other funding or programs in your community that are targeting the homeless population or at risk of homelessness, just so that you can collaborate and work together. And then we would also encourage that you have board representation of someone with lived experience on your board, but that is not a requirement. I just realized that the title of the screen says requirement, but it's just an encouragement. So these three things are just an encouragement, not a requirement. All right, so for the award amounts, we're hoping that people would ask for a range of about $100,000 to $400,000, but that doesn't mean that you can ask for less. We definitely would love larger amounts, but we want it to be realistic to what your agency and organization has capacity to spend, and especially for your community. If asking below 100,000 is what your staff is capable of, then feel free to do that. But we have money to give out, and we would love to award you. So, in terms of match, some other people might be familiar with match, but there's no local match that is required for this funding. So, I know for our ESG folks in round one, this was a huge burden that was lifted off of them. That there is no match that is required. And then also this funding can be used for match for emergencies, the Emergency Solutions Grant. If you want any more information about that, Jim is your go-to guy for that information. All right, so getting into a little bit of definitions of what rapid rehousing is versus homeless prevention, I think this is a really helpful kind of background before we dive into program requirements and what it would look like to implement this grant. For those of you who may be a little unfamiliar or just need to be brushed up on what rapid rehousing is, it's a housing intervention that's designed to help individuals and families quickly exit homelessness and return to permanent housing. So it's a very housing first approach. So folks do not have to have employment or income or not have a criminal record in order to secure housing. They've seen a lot of really great research, and the data that is coming out of doing implementing rapid rehousing is exponential, that families are being housed quicker and staying housed longer, which is really great. It often consists of three components. So identifying housing for families, providing that rental assistance and helping them move in, and then wrapping services around them like case management or, helping them with employment. For the purpose of TANF, we are calling it short-term rapid rehousing. So that's in quotes because our assistance for this grant, you can only help up to 4 months worth of assistance. So in other grants, you may be able to utilize your funds to extend out multiple months, almost a year for rapid rehousing. But for the purpose of TANF, we can only assist up to 4 months worth of assistance. And again, feel free to put questions in the chat for Jim and I. For homeless prevention, it's a little bit different than rapid rehousing. It's a housing intervention that's designed to help families and individuals from losing their housing. So they currently are housed and they may be facing eviction. Their lease might be not be renewed, or perhaps they're in a domestic violence situation and they need new housing. This is when homeless prevention efforts and assistance would come in. It's often used to help pay for a security deposit or to find new housing for a survivor of domestic violence, to help with utilities. So typically to keep folks housed. Again, this is a short-term assistance, so that's up to 4 months worth of assistance. Kind of comparing the HUD definition um, for rapid rehousing. So HUD category 1, meaning that the family is not currently housed, they're living in a place not meant for human habitation, or they are fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence. So that's that category 4. For category 2, it's someone who is facing eviction, going to lose their housing, and they don't have resources to obtain other housing. Participant eligibility. So the families that are eligible to receive your funds, if you were funded by us, they have to be a US citizen or legal US resident residing in Indiana. It also includes they have to be a parent, a grandparent, or caregiver to a child under the age of 18. If they do have a child that is 19, they must be a full-time student in order to qualify. And it could also be an expectant parent. So if someone is pregnant, this also qualifies as a family. It could also be a dependent child in the household of a parent or guardian who meets these eligibility criteria. The family must also meet an income threshold, so that's at or below 200% of the current federal poverty level. And that's often verified by the most recent 30 days of their income. Diving into the specifics for rapid rehousing, going back to that HUD definition of what is their definition of homelessness. So that family must be experiencing homeless currently. So either in a shelter or in a place not meant for human habitation, or fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence. For that person, they must not have any other residence or maybe are lacking the resources and support networks to get them housed. And then for homeless prevention, this would be someone who's at imminent risk of homelessness. So someone without the resources to obtain ongoing housing due to eviction or their lease is going to end, some of those examples that I stated previously. And then again, that category 4 of are fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence. For the purpose of TANF, you will be required to document this eligibility. So if a family comes to you, we do have a list of the documents that would be required to support if they are eligible for the program. On our website, we have a great list of those, this addendum that you could look at, so to look at ahead of time. And then we also have our manual, the TANF manual on the website, which kind of outlines what kind of supporting documentation you would need for someone's eligibility for the program. And then just to make it obvious that you guys would be responsible for verifying that eligibility. Any questions before I keep moving on about participant eligibility, your eligibility as an applicant for the funds? I'm not seeing anything in the chat, so I'll keep it moving, but feel free. All right. Regarding coordinated entry, we are implementing the coordinated entry system with TANF. If you are using the TANF program as match for ESG, we do require that you use the coordinated entry system when you are selecting families to assist. If you are using TANF as match, the CE requirements of the ESG program would apply to that. So just being mindful of that if you are going to be using TANF as match. And if you are having troubles, because this is such a short-term amount of assistance, if you are using the coordinated entry system and are running into some barriers with that, We would encourage that you use the coordinated entry system above everything else. But if you are running into barriers to that, we are extending the request of that you maybe use your own internal selection process. So we would ask that you would reach out to me to share what kind of barriers or experiences you're having with the CES system, and we could provide you with uh, an approval process of letting you use your own process. But we would just want to make sure that that process is equitable, it's treating clients fairly. So let me know if you have questions about that as well. For homeless prevention projects, you would not need to use the coordinated entry system. So whether you're using TANF as match or not, you don't use the coordinated entry system. All right. So for program components, this is what you can spend your money on. We have financial assistance, rental assistance, financial services, and administration costs. So those are the main four buckets. And I'll have in a few slides, you'll be able to get to see what the potential budget looks like. So these are the four components that you can put money into these buckets. For financial services, you can use the funds for a security deposit. This security deposit must not exceed 2 months worth of rent. You can pay for a last month's rent, so this should be paid at the time of your security deposit typically, and must not exceed 1 month of rent. Additionally, you can provide funding for utility deposits. So this can be for gas, electric, water, sewage. Typically, these are used to help get someone into a new housing unit. And then also you can pay for utility payments. So this is per household, and this is per utility type. So those four types of assistance: gas, electric, water, and sewage. That's each service type. It cannot exceed 4 months of rent per service, or not rent, utility payments per service type. Additionally, you can pay for arrears, utility arrears, and this must be a one-time payment, and it must not exceed 4 months of service per utility type, U-type. I have an example here because sometimes people can get a little tripped up with the information I just shared with utility payments and arrears, but it could look like one of the four combinations. So you could pay for 4 months of utility arrears. You could pay for 3 months of current utility arrears and 1 month of a utility payment. You could pay for 2 months of your arrears, 2 months of current payment. So it's this just combination of arrears and current payments, but it cannot surpass four. And then this is for each service type. So 4 months of gas, 4 months of electric, 4 months of water, 4 months of sewage. Okay. Additionally, for rental assistance, you can pay for current rental payments. Again, that can't exceed 4 months of rent, so there is that 4 month cap. You can also pay for rental arrears. That would also need to be a one-time payment, similarly to the utility payments or the utility arrears. And for rental arrears, it can include late fees. So unlike the utility arrears, rental arrears can include late fees. And again, just that example of you could pay for 4 months of arrears, you could pay for 3 months of arrears, 1 month of current payments, or any of the following combination. It just can't exceed that 4 months of rental assistance. And then for those eligible costs, specifically the rent and utility assistance, that cannot exceed 4 months, like I said. And it's also those items must be in the name of the client receiving the funds. The only exceptions to those that we've seen come up with our first round of funding is that if the utilities are included in the rental payments, you can pay for those. If the utilities are in the landlord's name and it's being billed to the family, that is also eligible. We just want to make sure that when you are paying for someone's rent and you are paying for someone's utilities, that it is going to the family that you are serving. So in these scenarios that came up, they were. So these are some exceptions. All right, getting into financial services. Um, this is what we kind of put under the bucket of financial services is the direct program expenses. So if you have any direct program expenses, anything that is assisting the families directly, any work that you are doing, anything that you are purchasing that goes directly to families, such as your salaries and benefits for the staff that are working with the TANF program, or case management, cost of supplies or travel expenses for the direct program, then you could put that here in this financial services bucket. There is no limit or percentage. I'll get into the administration slide next. There is a cap on the administration bucket, but for financial services, these direct program expenses, there is no cap for or maximum for the amount of funds that you can put in here. Okay. For admin, these are any indirect program expenses. So these might be salaries or benefits for any staff that might be doing accounting or payroll, the back end work of your agency to support the TANF staff. I will say any eligibility determination activities, that's one of the ones I would asterisk. According to FSSA, the time that you are spending talking to a family, seeing if they even are eligible for the TANF program, that time, staff time, any, supplies that you use for that would be put in this admin bucket. And then once the family is in the TANF program, that staff time, any of those supplies would be in the slide before, the direct program expenses. Any questions about eligible costs? I can go back a few slides too if people have questions. Okay, we'll keep it moving. So this is what your budget would look like. Again, you see those larger buckets of financial assistance, financial services, rental assistance. Those are the three main buckets for each: rapid rehousing and for homeless prevention. For the administration bucket, so those indirect costs, it can only be 10% of your total budget. So be mindful of that when calculating your asks or how you would like to split up your amounts. All right. For the TANF program, requirements for reporting is that you just submit your data, your client level data, into HMIS and DV client track in a timely and consistent manner. So that is the only reporting requirement that we have for this program, is to put your data into HMIS and DV client track. This is super, super important, as I will be pulling that data from HMIS or DV client track to then report to FSSA. So I will be the one reporting to FSSA, but if there is no data in HMIS or DV client track, then we have nothing to report. So it's really, really important to do that. So we are requiring that. The reports that I'll be sending to FSSA are on a monthly basis, a quarterly, and one annual report. All right, so some program requirements just to review, that you would be the one verifying the household eligibility through that client file documentation, which is on our website. Those forms can be very helpful. And then that you'd be submitting your monthly claims to IHCDA for reimbursement. Enter the data on all of the households in the HMIS or DV client track, abiding by Housing First and HUD's equal access rule, and then for rapid rehousing programs, participating in the PIT and the HIC. Additionally, attending those IHCDA TANF trainings or webinars that would come up, but these are some of the main requirements for this TANF program. All right, any questions? I'm just recognizing now that on the last slide I mentioned, let me go back, submitting monthly claims. This program is a reimbursement program. So you would be submitting your monthly claims to IHCDA, and then we would reimburse you through your claims. So I don't think I mentioned that or added a slide on that, but it's good to be aware of that.
That's a good call out, Laura.
Yep.
And a way to think about it is, say you're claiming your expenses for July. You've assisted, four clients with whatever services they needed. And so you've done that in July. So come August 15th, you would be submitting your claim for those July expenses. And then we anticipate probably about a 30-day turnaround from the 15th. So before you're reimbursed for those July expenses. So you'd be looking at by about September 15th, about halfway through September, getting reimbursed for your July expense. So you will need to have some cash on hand to be able to kind of front these costs and to then get reimbursed. But we've tried to make the reimbursement process as quick and painless as possible.
Yeah, and
Next,
I'll be sure to add a new slide in with that information because so once we send it out, um, people can have that information.
thank you, Laura.
Yeah.
Next up, we are going to kind of walk through the application, and I can offer some insight on a couple of these items. Um, so first off, you're going to see, your normal contact information, and I believe, let's see, so you will want to include who the contact person is. This would be the person we'd be communicating with any questions that we have on the application. And then on the next question is going to be your executive director's information. That might be the same information you're putting in twice, but if there's somebody that Laura and I should be communicating with about your application for any questions and then getting that announcement to, and if that person's different, be sure to include that. As Laura said, one of the requirements is that you have a UEI. If you don't have that yet, that is something that you would have enough time to get registered and apply. You would go to sam.gov, and then you would see, I believe, a button for unique entity identification, and you would register for that. And it's an alphanumeric string that there's no way to remember, so you'll be copying and pasting it. Uh, but that number tells us we can go on that site and we can know if this particular agency is eligible to receive funding. And so they track who's disbarred or might have some suspensions from federal funding there. Then you're going to tell us if you have current status as a 501(c)(3), and then you're going to attach evidence of that later on. We want to know if you have any unresolved findings from IHCDA, or if you've received ESG funding from an entitlement city, or any other federal funds. If there's an unresolved findings or funds have been recaptured, um, this isn't your application won't get thrown out if that has been the case, but we do want to know a bit more about why. Um, with this funding, it's important that we're able to get most, if not all, of the funds spent. We don't want to end up where we're giving money back or not expending all of the money that we've been awarded for this program. So we want to make sure that you're able to do the same thing. And so just tell us what might have been the circumstances there. Want to get some general ideas about your organization. So ask about your overall organizational annual budget, the size of your board, and then we get to a little more information on your board, how frequently you meet. This question does receive some points. If you have a board term limit policy, If you have people with lived experiences of homelessness on the board, both of those will receive points. If you have diversity and inclusion policies for the board, then we want to know just how much experience your organization has in managing state and federal grants. This one is weighted pretty heavily as well, because these grants with TANF, which we're kind of mirroring off of the ESG process, i- they're not easy grants to start off in. As Laura covered, you're going to be responsible for um, putting client data into HMIS, which is, if you haven't been doing that before, it is kind of a heavy lift. It's certainly not impossible and easy to grasp, but um, it takes some staff time and a little bit of expertise. So we want to know just how much experience you have working with some high level grants that might be asking a lot from your organization. We want to be sure that you're um, utilizing financial accounting systems there. So just tell us which ones you're using, along with if your records are maintained in a software system. Again, these are mirrored off of ESG requirements. Um, if that financial system is password protected, we want to make sure that that information is secure. So you're going to tell us that. And if the staff that handle the organization's funds are bonded, and then you will be asked to upload evidence of that, usually just a summary page of that insurance coverage, sometimes called a fiduciary bond. We want to know, just have a brief description of your organization and some of the programs and services you offer. Hopefully, we're meeting some new folks through this and some new organizations that we haven't funded, at least through community services at IHCDA. So we want to know a little bit about your background and kind of what your role and vision and mission is there. We want to know um, if you currently administer a rental assistance program, because there's a lot of processes, a lot of procedures that would need to be in place to get this off the ground. Again, not a deal breaker, but if you have been operating that program, tell us, what funding sources you have, how many clients you're serving, and then how you might be able to grow that program, how you would be able to take this TANF funding and scale up that successful work. If you don't currently have a program in place, that's all right. But we do want to know what your program plan would be in your rollout timeline. This is a 12-month grant, and so we would want to see that you're able to get rolling and be assisting folks, within the first few months of receiving the funding, and being able to expend all of what you're awarded. And I anticipate we would have some awards to folks that haven't ran one of these programs before, because our goal with this is to get to folks that need the assistance, and that's going to be with working. We're going to do that by working with new partners. So excited to have some new folks come aboard. And then you're going to give us your service area, cities or counties. We don't have any stipulations or requirements there. If your service area is city boundaries, let us know that. If you serve 5 counties, let us know that. If you're kind of concentrated within, a multi-county service area in a certain area, give us that little detail as well. Then we have some programmatic questions, kind of how you bring people into your program. So we're going to ask if folks are required to pass a background screening before they enter your program. If um, there's a blanket um, kind of block to folks that might have criminal convictions in their past. If you require folks to be clean and sober to enter your program. We want to know whether or just how you're treating folks based on sexual orientation or family composition. Um, so are you serving people regardless and according to the gender they identify with? Um, are you expediting admission processes? Is your staff working with that client to help do some things on their behalf. We want to see that we're trying to get people in to housing as quick as we can, and not there is some value. I had an old supervisor said that, folks that are receiving assistance need to have some skin in the game. While there's definitely, I can agree with that to a point, the goal is to get people housed. So we want to know that your staff is working to help expedite that process. Um, I see a question, so we will get to that in just a moment. I want to get through this bank of questions here. Last one on this page. Oh, it's all right. You were able to read it there.
Sorry, Dim.
That's all right. Um, we do want to know if you're participating in those coordinated entry meetings. Some people, they call them different things: case conferencing, coordinated entry meeting. It's where folks in your community get together and discuss that prioritization list and kind of who meets what eligibility and kind of who can land where. So is your agency participating in those? Are you allowing for are you allowing for feedback from those that you serve? Client voice is extremely important. I believe in my core that you you listen to those that you're trying to serve. And so we want to know that. Want to know if your staff is trained in clinical and non-clinical strategies for supporting folks with harm reduction, trauma-informed practices, things like that. Um, if you've hosted or training or hosted or attended any training or issues related to equity and inclusion. I want to take a break here from this walkthrough and address a question we had from one of the attendees. If you have multiple programs, which one are you referencing for these questions? So I would say if you're requesting TANF funds that kind of go over um, a few different programs or approaches, you would kind of you would answer those to what applies to all. Um, but if you're, requesting, if you've got a specific program that's just maybe you have a program that's focused on mothers with children, then you could speak specifically to that program if that's where you're going to be applying those funds. But it really could go back to that description that you give on your program and how you're going about that. And that can help kind of give us some insight into the questions you're answering below. Hopefully that was a clarifying question or answer there for you. We also want to know if you're tracking outcomes for households based on demographics. That's always something funders want to know. They want to be able to go through that data and make sure that we're serving those who most need the service. Are you currently using HMIS? I mentioned earlier it's kind of a steep learning curve. Again, I don't want to scare anybody away from it, but it's a data system. So some folks take right to those things. Some folks need a little time. So if you're already using that, we see that as you're ahead of the game. If not, we know that you might need some more intensive training or some one-on-one coaching with that. And then we want to know if you participated in the last point in time count or housing inventory count. And then we, I believe, wrap up the application with some narrative questions. These we don't intend for, we did not put any character counts in here, but at the same time, we don't intend for these to be novels. So as succinctly as you can answer the question, and as this says, these are worth up to 10 points, and we will have some internal reviewers going through these and assigning those point values. But this is important stuff, so we want to know kind of how you're working or your experience and training with working on housing needs assessments with clients. What experience you have in placement services. what your strategy is. And, this is vitally important for this program, with it only being 4 months, and some of that might be for past expenses that household has. What's your strategy for making sure that that household, that family, moves to permanent housing after this short subsidy ends? Landlord engagement, we know from the work that we fund, is it can make or break a housing program. So we want to know your experience with landlord engagement and what strategies you use there. Some organizations and communities have robust systems. Some are just trying to get that started. So describe where you're at there, and what your communication is with those folks, and kind of how you intervene in landlord and tenant disputes. Then we want to know your experience in serving our target population of pregnant women and families with children under 18. Is this kind of your wheelhouse? Is this a new area that you'd be moving into? Lastly, we want to know how you're integrating and coordinating with other programs in the community. I don't want you to take this as, well, if there's another program in the community, you won't receive funding. We know nobody's getting fully funded by any grant. So we just want to know how you're working with other organizations to benefit that client, is really the important angle there. Your funding request. So this isn't a fancy budget form or anything like that. You're just going to tell us what your overall request is. And then the only breakdown we will have you do at this point is tell us how much you forecast of that total amount going to rapid rehousing and how much to homeless prevention. If you were to be awarded funding, Laura would get with you to fill out that detailed budget that was shown earlier, that has the staff time and the direct services. But we don't need to get that granular yet. Just need to know kind of where you think these amounts are going. And we are able to move funds between rapid and rehousing and homeless prevention. So this is just a forecast. If you get into it and need more funding in one of those buckets, you can move between those. Then we'll have you upload your documents, the 501c3 letter, your liability insurance, just like that summary page so showing the fidelity bond insurance that for staff that'll be handling any finances, and then your most recent organizational audit. After that, you'll type in your name, which signs and dates that you're submitting it, and it'll come to us, and you will be done with that part of it. Again, those applications are due by 5 p.m. on October 28th. And the link is there, will be there in this PowerPoint that will go out. If you would like, you should be able to move through the application and see all the questions. If you run into issues with that, let us know. You could reach out to me and I can provide a PDF of the full application. That way you're able to kind of see what's ahead in it. And if you wanted to build your responses in a Word doc, you'd be able to see those ahead of time. The next steps, hopefully hopefully you'll want these funds and get an application in by the 28th. Again, we would be presenting recommendations to our board on December 19th, and then quickly getting those award announcements out to folks. And I'll let Laura take over for some of these resources. She played a huge hand in getting all these together for you.
Yeah. Thanks, Jim. This is just links to our TANF website. So if you looked up TANF IHCDA, it would lead you right to this website. It has a lot of really great information regarding program participation, eligibility, eligible expenses. The TANF manual right here is on there, which goes into a lot of more detail. And then these two charts just outline what you'd need for client files, so any families that you would assist, and then if you were to receive funding, what you would need to submit a claim. So, looking over some of these things might be helpful for you when you're considering applying for the TANF funds. So, and if you have any questions about anything on the website, anything in the manual, feel free to reach out to me or reach out to Jim. Um, and yeah, we really appreciate that you all are here. We want to be available to you, especially during this time of the application being open. If you have questions about anything related to the program, feel free to ask us. Um, if there are any more questions as well, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll hang around for the next few minutes to answer some. Um, but we'll make sure that this recording and the slides are uploaded on the website for you to access to go back to as well. So, any final words, Jim?
Nope, just that we are available.
Mm-hmm.
We want to make sure you feel good about getting your application in. So do take
Mm-hmm.
us up on reaching out if you have any questions on, um, if the clients you serve, if you want to pitch some scenarios to say, do you think this is a good fit for this funding?
Mm-hmm.
If you have questions about eligibility for your organization, anything like that, just feel free to
Mm-hmm.
reach out to us and we will get you taken care of. So I don't see any questions in the chat. So thank you all for
Mm-hmm.
attending, and we will get the recording and PowerPoints posted soon. And we appreciate you being here.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much, everyone.